I have the pleasure of being here with Tonyduva, otherwise known as Tony Peterson, and he has been playing Star Wars for a very long time. He said, I think since the beginning, since 1995, roughly. And I think you
Correct.
played for a while. You said until kind of it kind of died down locally, and then you kind of discovered GEMP later, and you had some success in Open and a few other championships, and you also made it to the top 8 in 2024 for the retro event. So awesome. Glad to have you here, sir.
That's correct. And like I would like to join the community more, then I have to learn to play the open games. And I find it more amusing by getting into the cars, but it's like riding a bike. You have to get on the bike again, and so much new cards, and new deck, and new deck text to learn. So it's like I said, practice, practice, and more practice to get good.
100%. All right. Well, let me share my screen here. It's been kind of slow. And then we'll go over kind of the decks you had. All right. Excellent. I think you see what I see. And we'll go over the first couple here. All right. So your dark side that you did 2024 was a hunt down based tie deck. So there's various different ways of playing the tie deck. Dr. Torch, inevitably, he played a Bring 'em Before Me variant of ties. There's also like a Kuat, Wakilima, however you say, version of ties where you just start out with basically 2 planets and then you go from there. So some people do set your course for Alderaan, they do a tie deck from that. But you chose to do kind of hunt down as a base, which I played you, before you went to these opens. You creamed me the first couple times at least. I was not expecting ties and hunt down to work. Yeah, tell us kind of why you chose this deck and kind of like how it works.
Well, I should say that the original was way back in the old days when I tried this deck for fun, and then I didn't have the effect to pick like Mooley. I had to play 3 of them, but since I played and I think I went 21-0 in local tournaments before I lost my first game due to Arcona on the ground. So I thought this is a good deck I can stick with. It's a big surprise because many people don't expect hunt down in space. So I think I like to cover the what should we say main things on the ground, which is on the docking base, and I prefer to be on the Star Destroyer, I lost Death Star docking bay just to avoid stomach and stuff like that because I don't want my characters to get lost. And I use the other 2 docking bays to get the more expensive Lord Vader to just the cost of 6 force and deploy them to or move them to the Death Star site. So it's more safe there from stomach.
I agree with you, and I was curious because you said it mirrors like Bring 'em Before Me, like Bring 'em Before Me. They don't get to do kind of the Death Star docking bay because of the Death Star 2 rule. So a lot of decks they do like the Cloud City docking bay, right? They do Cloud City docking. They do the dark side version of this one. I know you said you
Yeah.
liked the deploy, the deploy bonus, because yeah, okay, Lord Vader deploys a little bit better, but why not just do the Cloud City one? It didn't cost you that much because you're vulnerable at Endor to Lost in the Wilderness.
Well, the big difference for me to Cloud City and the Death Star is that I can't play put all sections on alert on Cloud City. On the Death Star, I can surprise that with eliminating some character's ability or possible to draw Destiny or something like that. And that's a 6 I can get back in my deck if my opponent prefers to play an Rebel at the Death Star side. So I think it's a good high Destiny and it could do some pretty good damage if played correctly.
No, I agree, and that's one of the best things about the Death Star docking bay is you can use all sections. I guess my question though is you just really like the deploy benefit to Lord Vader, on here directly, like you can deploy directly mean, what some decks do is they deploy like the Executor, then they do Docking Bay Transit to, you know, Indoor, wherever they really want to go to still get the -2. But I guess what I'm saying is like, why did you not go with Cloud City Docking Bay versus Indoor? For sure, you want to do Death Star Docking Bay. No argument there. But is there another reason why you wanted Indoor Docking Bay instead of the Cloud City one?
Absolutely, because I could play the Ender system, so I could play ties on the docking bay, make them go to used pile. If I have fleet systems out, I can play the squadron on the ground and so on, just to take them to take some attrition damage, and or if I don't need it, I just move them into space into the Ender
I
system.
I got you. Okay, so yeah, so hypothetically, you're battling on the indoor docking bay. You put a tie there, and maybe the tie survives. If the tie survives, usually you'll forfeit this fork, but for some reason it survives, you'll just float it back up there. Not a big
Yeah.
deal. And you're right. There for this one, there is a deploy benefit to deploying to indoor. You're right about that. Then that applies to the docking bay too. Good point there.
Yeah.
Okay. And all right, cool. So, and you opted to go with one, two, three, four, five Vaders, and you used kind of the classic Darth Vader, two Lords of the Sith, two Lord Vaders, and two lightsabers. Um, okay, so five Vaders, two sabers. That's fairly common. Um, can you tell us like your choice? Like, why not six Vaders? Why not four Vaders? Is the reason you did five in particular?
In the years, I tried to balance, but normally I had more ties and I had one more Vader in the deck. But let's say in 5 out of 6 games, I normally always pull a Vader on my starting hand, and that's very important for this kind of deck. I think the big challenge is if I meet an hidden base and I don't get the force in the first turn to get an Vader out. Normally, when the starting hand is, I have an opportunity to have 6 force, so I might get Invader on the first turn if I had a lucky pull on my hand, and that's why I have all 3 docking bays of Executor and Ender and the Death Star, so I could turn my objective on the first turn and make damage to my opponent. I don't prefer to play Vader with Saber just because he has no immunity to attrition. The other 3 characters have.
No, it's true. No, they do, and you generally want Vader to hold his own. And this is not a hunt down dueling, right? So you're not using
No.
epic duel. Yeah, in Mandarin's deck, he has like I think he has four like Vader with sabers, right? But he's just planning to deploy and duel and then hopefully win. Where you are very much trying to stay on the ground and get your mobilization points bonuses, and you're kind of using ties as fodder. Did you ever try a variant where you did Vader with sabers and you just use the ties to forfeit instead of Vader, or did that just not work out for you?
I did that in the old days, but I thought it was more balanced to have the deck like it is like now. And with more ties in the deck and some more systems, then it gets more vulnerable against Grimtash to take every duplicate cards out of my hand. And if I lost too many cards of that, then the deck damage would hurt me too much to be able to win. Or like this in this action, I want to retrieve, battle and retrieve, and different ways of for me to retrieving cards. And I think that's the main surprise with this deck, which my opponents who haven't seen it or met it are surprised. So that's my little point of this deck.
No, for sure. No, this deck is surprising, and I was really surprised by your balance because you know usually in fight tie decks, you might have like 12 tie fighters, four dreadnoughts, maybe two tie assault squadrons, maybe,
Mm.
and okay, you have the classic two copies of CNR fleet systems because it's just so critical for the deck. So you have two, just like me. But you did a kind of a Twilight Advisor here. So no, I was surprised too that you were able to hold up as much as you were. And I was also surprised too that you still ended up doing 4 systems. So okay, yeah, yeah. Indoor, you'll have to get. You don't have a Marajek here, so most people use Commander Marajek, in order to get their
Well,
systems, and you have none. And so I was curious about that too.
yeah, but I tried to circle some cards around, and Crush of the Rebellion with a Vader is 2 cards I normally can rotate out depending on who I might get in. What was I as my opponent? Since I don't know much of my opponents, this normally works, but I normally have a Mergic in the deck just to get sure to if I don't get the system, I might get him to get some system out of my deck. But for instance, since I saw the Dr. Torch deck and he plays a Revolution, I think it's more critical for me to have Crush of the Rebellion in the deck so I could pull an Evader so I don't get force choked due to Revolution.
Yeah, and that sucks. I had that happen to me one of my games. So there's no
Mm.
doubt. Receive fun. It's fun to do, but not to receive. I agree. So what in this particular game you kind of took out a Marajek and some other card and you or 2 Marajeks and you put in a Crushed Rebellion and Evader. That's what you did. So you started what with Crushed Rebellion and what Arrest Order and Mobilization points. Is that your plan with that?
I start with Arrest Order, Mob Points, and the classic. Oh, no, I can't see my own cards. I have to just be closely looking. Um,
There's no oppressive
you
enforcement.
you cannot hide forever. It's normally because with that card I can guard me against cheese decks and pull something out if I have those other effects in the deck. So
Yeah. So yeah, and it looks like you just made choices. So you had one grabber, although you had no oppressive enforcement. I, I'm
no.
guessing just you didn't think you needed it, or just everything else was kind of more important, is what I'm guessing here.
Uh, I was thinking about having it, but I think it's more important because sometimes I've met decks that are a little cheesy for anger for aggression, and then telepathic projector is good to have or pull in the hands. And due to that, I could always search for docking bay. Then I could probably avoid an insert card in the decks for sometimes I pull the right cards so I don't need to forfeit cards due to anger, fear, aggression with some who just avoids fighting and stuff like that.
Okay. And obviously, I have limited cards here, but if you're doing Crush the Rebellion, it's interesting. You didn't try to sneak in like one I have you now. You did Evader only. Is there a reason why I have you now didn't make the cut? Since you were going to play Crush the Rebellion.
Then I had to decide if I want to have a grabber or pull something out other out of my deck, and I thought about it, but since it's a space deck, I would prefer to have lateral damage to make more damage in a space battle than I have you now, because I think I could be pretty strong on the ground. And I hope that I rotate my high destiny cards so that if we need to battle, I would prefer to win a battle, and 2 more battle damage on I have you now. I think that would do less damage than lateral damage would do in space. So if I would have to choose from those two, I think I would prefer to put in the lateral damage in the deck instead.
Okay, interesting point. And I guess another interesting point here is you have dark maneuvers. And the nice thing about dark maneuvers is, unlike the kind of Reflections 2 combo versions, any starfighter. So it's 2 remover, one power, any starfighter, which means you could put it for Zuckuss, who is very often the target of X-wing laser cannon. Or I guess if you wanted to, you could do a regular TIE fighter. Maybe they want to shoot one down. Was this like intended like as a surprise, like, "Ha, you thought you shot me down, but you didn't," or you just mostly just using this as a tracking method?
Little as a tracking, and when I did the final 8 confrontation in December, when I played Dark Maneuver, some people were expecting, oh, and here comes the Talon Roll, and I've just thought the Talon Roll don't make any more battle damage, so I prefer to play it as a high destiny, getting back in the deck and use all power to just add my power and make more damage due to attrition and battle damage than just making a Talon Roll and making something go away.
It's interesting because Dr. Torch had the opposite, to some degree, I guess. Like he really wanted a Talon Roll. He really wanted to do the kind of lateral damage Talon Roll combo, and I think that's one way he got rid of like his opponent's Falcon. I think it was, yeah, I think it was uh, in Rabbit's one there. So, but that makes sense. So, and out of curiosity, I'm sure you thought about this. So why not, Talon Roll versus like Masterful Move? I mean, Masterful Move, I guess it costs a force, but you'd also get, oh, you have no monarch here. Maybe that's why you have no monarch here. You have no monarch, and you have no Gick here. So is there a reason why
And
that didn't? Yeah.
no extra visage either to search for that card. And even if I would use my main characters for Janus to rotate some cards and stuff like that, I haven't found any use. Gick I could use in a deck, but still, that would be one Destiny cards in the deck, even if I would pull it. But I would need both Gick and the Masterful Move to that, and that's two slots in the deck I need to change cards for. Or, of course, like I said, I could use Crusher Rebellion and Evader to rotate those cards out if I expect to get a beatdown somewhere.
So what? So what? You would cycle Evader so you make sure you draw 4. Is that what you're saying instead of a 1 from like one of your ties? Is that what you're saying, or what?
In that case, I think a 4 or with no, what was I, regular Vader, a 4 would be a 5.
Okay.
A Geek could, depending on what kind of deck I meet, then the Geek could make some battle. What was I, reduce my battle damage, but since normally the decks I've met don't have a beat down on the ground or beat down in space, I learned that the Geek don't provide me what I need to protect me in the deck.
Okay. And I was a little bit curious because you have 4 systems here. You only have 3 dreadnoughts, and I guess technically you have a dreadnought and you have a Zuckuss. So you do have 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 ships, 10 potentially if you're able to cycle this back in. Are you really only like, for instance, having 4 planets, but like planning to only use 2 or 1? Are these just like extra cards so you draw them? Like how many planets are you really like trying to occupy realistically during a game?
I would like to occupy Andor and Kashyyyk. The bonus would be if I have Kifix out too. And why I only have 10 ships is, like I said, it's Sukkos. I could have Sukkos with some TIE fighter or with Forlom out. Then I got 2 Destiny draws on where he is. And he has a hyperspeed of 5, so he can move pretty long. I needed to put in Hoth just in case that if I get all systems out, I have to have an opportunity to move between all the systems with the dreadnoughts as a base. I tried to play with 4 dreadnoughts earlier, but then it's another card I need to pull out just to have that extra dreadnought to move around. And I thought that, do I need a 4th dreadnought to move around? So,
Okay.
so, um, in this way, I stuck with 3, and that's enough for me in this deck.
Makes sense. And so basically I'm assuming the idea is okay, you like Kashyyyk because it's 2 and 1 for them. And so it's a little bit to your advantage, unless they're like playing, Mind We Have Learned, and they kind of like do Jedi Test 1, they do like Great Warrior, and they deny like your force drain bonuses.
Yeah, and
You know,
that's why I prefer to have Endor and Kifix in the deck too, because they can't be reduced. So
Right. Did you think about doing Sullust in your mind? Because Sullust is also two, and I don't care if you're finding a mind we have learned deck because you're still going to do two, or you think marginally you just want to deny them one force, so it was better. Or help me understand that one.
Well, I never thought of that one or looked at Solos at that, but mainly it's one force less for my opponent, depending on what he play. And sometimes my opponent play their Kashyyyk, which needs 6 ability for me to make something, and then I can turn it around if he has played that Kashyyyk. So Salast has never been a choice of mine to do. I prefer to play Kashyyyk in that case. It doesn't depend if he plays Mind What You Have Learned or play Yeta Test 1 or something like that. It would hurt me more, I think, if he played to Yeta Test 2 or something more, which reduced my destiny, because that's the main issue in my deck. I think I have too many low destinies. I need to circulate the high destinies in my deck.
That's true. And I guess, for instance, like Zuddens, and I guess other people do too, like they have multiple copies of Janus. So I thought it was interesting because it's usually like the dueling hunt downs and like the really high powered hunt downs that do two Mara Jades. And it does make sense. I mean, two Mara Jades, because you have her Saber, the 2-to-1 ratio generally works, right? You have 5 Vaders, 2 Sabers. Okay, 4-2, 5-2 makes sense. But you know, you could have done 2 Januses, right, to help you cycle more, or are you just finding that you don't need to cycle that much, and therefore having 2 Januses isn't that big of a deal?
Yeah, I had to choose between Janus have 2 of him or 1 of Janus and Simalo, and I think that sometimes Simalo can help me looking at my opponent. What does he have in the top of his draw deck, just to be sure if I want to use it, or uh, pull an extra destiny. So
No, no, no. Simalu is good, and he's cheap to the Emperor. You only did
yeah.
one Emperor in your deck too. Obviously, you have limited slots. It's hard to do a lot of guys. Some people like doing 2 Emperors so that it's easier to get the bonus for Alu or Janus. I thought that was interesting. Obviously, you went with Mara, which if you get her Saber, lets you drain faster. So this deck does do a lot of pressure. Like people have to fight you, or do something, right? Or they're going to get drained, and you're going to be able to retrieve quicker. Um, so that's definitely a factor too there.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is good with Mara Jade, she's a spy, so I can deploy her anywhere to places there are no deployment restrictions. So I can get her down, or I can protect my visage depending on what happens, or maybe if I have draw their fire on the table, use to retrieve, play some ties depending on where she's gonna fight, and track the cards around like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And yeah, you kind of played it straight here. So obviously, your plan is you like being Endor because Endor, stacks with the docking bay. And if you needed to, you could go from Endor to Hoth to Kifex. And I'm assuming this is mostly, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, Kifex is 2 and 2 makes sense. This is mostly just to protect, Wakilumi in case they want to make your TIE fighters more expensive. You can just move all the way there. Is that the idea of Kifex, basically, other than the drain bonus?
Both actually, the drain bonus, and if I need to move there, but still I would need a ship with a hyperspeed. So it's to the 4 ships I have in the deck, Sukkos or the 3 dreadnoughts, to prevent that the ships are going to be more expensive to play than normally.
Yeah, makes sense. And then you have the 2 short range fighters, also fairly standard here. And I'm gonna take a guess here. Are you normally putting the Emperor to the Death Star docking bay, or Vader? Or who do you usually have at the Death Star? Because obviously you have the benefit of all sections there primarily.
Primarily, normally I try to get Vader on the docking bay just to not get him lost and just put all sections on alert. And the Emperor normally goes to the Ender docking bay or the Executor just for the extra force. And when I get Simalo or Janus, then I get an extra bonus train if they don't play Jedi Test number 1 or something like that. So that's the main goal to try to have Vader on the Death Star and maybe the Emperor on the Endor docking bay.
Okay. I like that. So obviously, choices here. I mean, a lot of decks they have, things like, they have things like barrier, right? There's no barrier. If someone wants to fight you directly, they pretty much can. So I'm guessing because you have no barrier and you mentioned, Emperor going to the Executor, are you like waiting to deploy the Emperor? Like I'm assuming that as soon as you have Vader, because of Hunt Down, you're just going to deploy him to Death Star docking bay as soon as you can. But when it comes to your other, are you kind of waiting for them to have backup? Like, are you deploying Mara only with backup, or you're just like, I'll deploy Mara to, indoor if I have to. I'm not going to worry about it. Or how do you kind of manage your risk there?
If I don't need to, I don't deploy more characters than I normally would have any use for. I mean, I could use for Loam on the ground just to remove game text from characters. If I need him, I would like to put him on the circus in space. So if I can, I prefer to use those two cards stuck on the hand until I really need them, depending on what my opponent does. And the same is actually with Mara Jade or U3PO, which I would try to deploy on a site to stop big drain. I don't play Imperial Barrier because if my opponent don't play Anger Fair Aggression, I could use projective telepathy to make my opponent use more force to battle or drain.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, you found a place for first strike. There's also there's like cards like Return to Base. Some version of the tie decks use this one. Did you think about using this card? Why didn't this one make the cut?
Well, um, I think the main thing is I think it's too expensive and it makes me the deck slow down just to what should I say put in a lost card in or to say stasis for one turn and return it to the hand and play it again. So no, that didn't make the cut into the deck because I think that the retrieval possibilities with the ties are bigger than using return to the base to use that to the dreadnoughts or something like that. It would cost too much force and lose some time in the deck.
Okay. And I think there's another one where it's like you can like deploy a TIE squadron for free. I forgot the name of it. It's this one, yeah, atmospheric assault. You only have one TIE assault squadron, so I guess it would have made less sense for you to deploy this. Like some decks have two or three of these. Um, so I guess that wouldn't make sense for your
Yeah,
version. Yeah.
yeah, and to be honest, that's the third card if we take the Crush Rebellion, Evader, and the Assault Squadron. That's the third card. Sometimes I'm thinking about switching out to other cards that I might need more in the deck. But for now, it's been quite good to have that because it's a little surprise. If they play X-Wing weapon or something like that, they can't target the squadron.
Right. And yeah, that's true. You're right. If you type, yeah, X-wing laser cannon, yeah, that's true. Laser cannon. Yeah, it very very clearly says may target a starfighter. Doesn't say starfighter or squadron. You're correct. They cannot directly target this. 100%. Well, another weakness, I guess, is like, you don't have any admiral's orders in yours, right? So, there is kind of the light side version that could hurt you, right? Like, I'll take the leader. If they do this, then, your regulars, TIE fighters are power 0. I guess they'd be +1 with, their dreadnoughts, but even with that +1, they'd be back to 0 if they had, Is there a reason you didn't want to
Yeah,
like try to do your own, any one of these ones? Like some people like to do like the version like this one, fighter cover. Of course, you don't have any starfighter weapons, so you just didn't opt to do any Admiral's Order. So if they have this one, you're in trouble. Go ahead.
yeah, but even if they have this, I'm on the lead on make me -2. Um, Normally, if I face that deck, then I need to prepare for it and play all power to the weapons, which reduces it nullifies that effect and makes me immune to attrition to all my TIE fighters. And if they play that and I deploy, I retrieve, we battle, we are on the same level because of I'm your leader and all power to weapons. And I can lose some ties. One goes to the use pile if I want to, depending on what my opponent draws as a destiny. And all the other ties is just a bonus because I deployed them and retrieved some cards.
I guess what I'm curious about though is you only have two all powered weapons. Some decks have three, some decks have four. So you obviously have the main version, the used version, which power +2, immune to attrition. You have the secondary version, lose on force, take three non-unique ties in the hand. So do you find yourself like wanting to hold on to these cards and then just if you don't for some reason if you don't draw and you like your regular TIE fighters, you're just gonna like draw into them? Like how do you determine whether you're gonna use the wait and draw more ties or are you gonna just sack this and get more ties earlier in the game?
Normally, I don't sack them because I normally get some ties on the hand, and I don't want to have too much ties or over 12 cards in the hand due to Grimtash. And to be true, if you don't need to play them, I don't play them just because I can, because I want to do the right damage at the right moment. And if I play three, then I could be stuck with a grabber where they're trying to push on us, and that's why I don't want to have three cards to pull TIE Fight out of my hand, or three all power to the weapons, or two or three dark maneuvers, because I want to confuse my opponent on if he play grabbers, what cards do he want to grab?
No, I agree with you, and I like playing that game as well, and I love it, when my opponent grabs the wrong card. Absolutely. So no, I do get that vantage point. So yeah, I guess that's one advantage of having dark maneuvers is maybe they think you have 50 million of these, they'll grab one, and maybe it's not that important. I suppose this is
Hmm.
you don't have that many sixes. I guess you have two sixes. Um, but maybe that's okay. You have five. Well, actually, no, you have another all section. So you have a couple options here if they grab that one. So that's true. That's cool. Okay.
And if it decides to grab the put all sections on alert, then the main goal isn't to maybe have Vader on Death Star anymore. I want to move into another site or moving along, depending on what kind of deck I playing against. So
I guess so, but I mean, the advantage of this card is that it's harder for them to kill Vader because if it was like an Obi-Wan with the lightsaber, whatever, right? They wouldn't be able to target them because it cancels their game text. It doesn't get a draw ability. But if this card is gone, yeah, if this card is gone, wouldn't you still want Vader here so he doesn't get lost in the wilderness or something like that? Like why would you want to
uh,
move him? Just because this is gone.
if I move him, I want to move him to the end of docking bay and have a tie on the ground, because a tie
Okay.
on the ground, then aren't allowed to play wilderness. So
Oh yes, that's true. You're right. Yep. Good point. Because it says whether it put no vehicles or starships. True. That's a natural protection. So you care less about this than many decks if you're prepared. That's great. Love it.
hmm.
Okay. I think you've
And the other
answered.
option is if put all section is alert and I haven't had an opportunity to use a player for long, he could always reduce the game text from Obi-Wan or Luke with a saber. So they just draw Destiny and I get rid of them on the ground. So
That's true. They would still get to draw Battle Destiny, but it's still pretty good. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Any other thoughts on this deck?
Not really. The matchup is that before we started this discussion, I thought, hey, let's have a look at my statistics that which is on the GIMP, and
Sure.
wow, I just said when I looked at the numbers and I saw that I played this deck over 200 times
Whoa.
in a tournament environment and around 100 games just for fun. And I'm glad to say that I have a statistic that says that 7 out of 10 games I win overall in fun play or tournament play.
That's impressive. And of course, I'm sure you have variance inside of there. It's not all the exact same, but generally speaking, the base is much the same. That's cool. Um,
Yeah, and like I said, I don't prefer to meta playing, but depending on who I'm facing and knowing normally or have some idea of what my opponent plays, I prefer to rotate some cards out to have a better protection against my opponent's deck. Um, the biggest challenge I have to beat deck is like main throne room deck with lots of mains because they have too much characters, so that's depending on getting fast in space because if they play mains with nudge, then they have some force reduction for me, which makes it harder for me to deploy my first Vader and make him lose to Visage, or if they play protection cards like Honor of the Jedi or something like that. That's a little more tricky and takes more time to get around that problem. And
yeah,
then I think Mara would be great, and maybe I put a Merrick in the deck so I could deploy spies on Yavin sites to get rid of those stuff so I could start doing some damage.
that makes sense. Yeah. I figure that throne is just fast. They beat you on tempo. That could be difficult. I figure that mind what you have learned. Although Great Warrior is annoying, I would think that if you can get your drains for two set up, if you can get to Endor and maybe Kifex quickly, then maybe you can kind of win the drain race against my way of learn. Now, only thing I'd say is you don't have any secret plans, right? You don't have secret plans, and you don't have come here, big coward. So I don't know. Maybe you'd have difficult because if it's a five test mind we have learned, maybe they get to five test, and a lot of decks they get to test two maybe and stop. That's what Doctor Torch does. How does this fare against mind what you've learned?
I haven't faced that many much test decks, but that one card I really would like to push into this is a Secret Plan because some cards use my Draw the Fire or something like that against myself, so they would get an opportunity to use Draw the Fire first strike just to retrieve. So to be true, Secret Plans is a card I would try to get into my deck just to make it cost more for my opponent to retrieve cards too, because that could be used against me too, as well as I use it myself. So that's one that I'm thinking a lot about bringing into my deck. But at the same time, I have these three cards I'm thinking about rotating or using around to switch a little momentum in the deck.
Makes sense. And the three cards, what is it for you? Usually, it's what you said it's a Vader and it's Crush the
Revada,
Rebellion
Crush
and
Rebellion, and maybe the Assault Squadron. On the character side, like I said, Simalo against another Janus or keep them like they are. Because if my opponent plays main decks or many characters on the ground, then I would need some more characters on the ground, depending on what kind of grounds my opponent plays.
yeah, and if they're using a Jedi Knight Luke, it'd be nice to be able to beat his attrition potentially. So if you have Simalu and he's with Emperor, you have a slightly better chance of doing that, and that can
Mm,
make a difference. You can't always have the saber. So
yeah.
yeah, I agree with you there. Cool. All right. Well then let's move on to the light side then. So you had a version of hidden base, and obviously there's lots of hidden base. We've kind of talked about it. So kind of a more classic one is close to what Dylan has done. So generally they like to do lots of X wings or lots of one thing. Yours, I liked, and I faced you a couple of times too, and it was also frustrating for me too because you not many decks do our most desperate hour and able to pull it off, and it seems for the most part, you did, and so you are capable of an infinite retrieval loop in this deck because this effect is not it's not an interrupt, right? So they can't grab it with what's it called, hell to pay, right? There'll be hell to pay. They can't do that. They would have to
Oh,
have like a different effect, like something special, in order to do that, and that would
yeah,
only stop it
or
once. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, well, my base in this deck is just that I like to move around in the space like I did on the Huntdown, but still I have characters to fight on the ground if I need to, or try to stop like rope deck. I would use protection of a Skywalker to reduce the drain on the ground if they don't play, like I said, Cloud City or Death Star docking base, stuff like that. But rope decks don't play that kind of ground, so I would pretty much stop the drains if I play against a rope deck or something like that.
When you say you mean oh route to operations? That's what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is really good for route to ops, and this Bausch actually is really good too because we don't usually pay attention to the text here, but it says while uncovered opponent's site prevents opponent from modifying or canceling your force trains at opponents, at opponents related side. So it's really for modifying the drains because ROPS will try to, the flip side will make it a -1. So if you could get Bausch there and you were able to control a site, you could make it so that, your sites you could drain. Of course, if you've done that, you probably have won the game. ROPS really has to flip. So yeah, so ROPS is probably one of the most impressive decks. I mean, how would you say you fare about it? I mean, you have some tech against it. You have Projection of Skywalker. I thought it was interesting you had Rogue One here, right? Why Rogue One versus like Rogue Three? Because Rogue Three would be kind of like Wedge's ship, but you did Rogue One. Help me understand that one.
That I think I haven't looked at it, but Rogue One is just I think um, I haven't really given that much thought. More than that, it's Luke's ship. Mainly, it's because I don't want to get stuck with an ice storm or stuff like that, and. Depending on what deck I face, they will be more protected inside the vehicle than being outside the vehicle. Um, so it's just been that I think I've been lazy. I haven't switched that cards out to any more useful cards. And there are also two other cards which I tried to rotate this December, and it was Red 7 with the small guy who's just a bonus train
Mm-hmm.
on
Routes here. Yeah.
Altair, but
Yeah.
still, he is a rebel. He is hyperspeed 5. I could use him also to retrieve, go from Tatooine to Alderaan.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a surprise guy, which was commented, "Oh, I don't know why he's playing that, and I don't understand." And
Yeah.
yeah,
No. No. No.
just a
No.
fun guy to throw in the deck. So
No.
it's really no purpose, and still it's two cards I could lose without having any thoughts that I don't need the guy for any special things.
No, I think it's very important to stack with Wedge, and Red 7 is one of my favorite cards because it's a Destiny 4. So it's the second
Yep.
highest Destiny out of, well, other than, okay, Red 5 with R2D2, but out of the non Luke ones, right? Red 6, so you do have the Jack. I love the Jack just because of his ship, and then, Elic Rue is the second one, but you're absolutely right because his text when at Relative System adds 1 to 4 strand, so it's a big deal. Now, you
And he
obviously,
works good.
yeah.
And it works good with Wedge because Wedge cancels the Battle Destiny with any red or rogue squadron pilot.
Absolutely. And no, and you follow my preferred method personally is I always like to have I always like to do the 1-2 rule. So if you have one main card, have like two cards. So like, if you have like a lightsaber, make sure you have two of that main. And so you have one wedge, make sure you have two, Rogue Squadron pilots, and you do, and that's great. I think you're much more able to get that combo off. So I love that. Yeah, I think my only comment might be, of course, that he also works well in a speeder, right? Now, I guess strictly speaking, if you make that combo work, maybe it doesn't matter, right? So, I don't know how did your games against Ralops work? Did you ever use your Rogue One very much, or did that not happen much against
Uh,
Galaxy, or how did that go?
Not really. Mostly, I used my rogue to attrition fodder. If I want to need or battle on the ground, it's a 6 attrition value, so it only costs 2 to make a high destiny battle draw. Just make the rogue go away. So it's mainly that, and I would prefer to use wedge in the space rather than having in on a speed on the ground. So
Yeah.
that's the main thing I think I have in Rogue One still in the deck.
Actually, and I didn't even notice that you're right because Luke's ship is 2 and 6, and the other ones are 2 and 5 and 2 and 5. So from a numerical standpoint, you're right. This is superior. So that does make sense. Um, okay, that's cool. And I guess yeah, okay. And I guess there's no alien you could deploy that has a 6 of forfeit. So for forfeit fodder, that makes sense. And you could deploy this, I suppose. Yeah, you could deploy this to Liberty if you wanted to as well. And you could deploy it to. No, you could not deploy it to Tantive. Tantive can't
No,
take a vehicle. Could you deploy to Spiral? No. No, pretty
no.
much you can only deploy to Liberty if you want extra fodder. Okay. All right. So yeah, so help us know like the general structure of the deck. I mean, obviously, you have your hidden base systems. You have one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 systems. Realistically speaking, you need to deploy Tatooine and Alderaan in order to get your stuff going. Um, Walk us through like kind of how you like to play the deck. Are you like playing conservative? Or are you just trying to like deploy Lando first turn as much as you can, or how does it go for you?
It depends on my starting hand. Like I said, depending on I get any systems or not on my starting hand, I would like to play Kashyyyk or Tatooine on the first or the second round, depending on if I have them on my hand. When I looked at what I still have in the deck, that's the decision if I want to start playing Starship with the pilots using a squadron card um, to get some decks out. If I know I have some system in my force pile, I prefer to pull cards on my first and second turn just to get the systems I truly want out. And like I said, I want Tatooine, I want Alderaan, and I would prefer to get Kifex, Coruscant, and Kessel out because they have a better drain opportunity. And if I get ships on Coruscant, all Imperials and their ships would be more expensive. At least at the first card or whatever cards they need to have a presence at that site or location just to make them normal pay cost to deploy again.
Oh, true. It's a devastating sight. So yeah. So basically, generally speaking, your first priority is to get your systems, and then your
Yep.
second priority is to deploy. Because what a lot of people do, I mean, I see you have strike planning. So I'm assuming your normal strategy is you do squadron assignments, strike planning, and wise advice, or potentially if not wise advice, then insight serves you well as protection against maybe hunt down or something. Is that
I would prefer to play. Normally, I start with your insight serves you well and wise advice and squadron assignments. So I could find my matching pilot ship if I need to. So, and that gives me an opportunity to, even if my opponent gets to look at the deck, then I get an opportunity myself to look at what I have in my reserve deck to be prepared what I have in my force pile if I want to pull some cards.
because you're going to be losing your insight serves you well to grab honor, basically is what you're saying? Or I guess you're saying you could also grab strike planning too if you wanted to.
It's depending on what kind of deck I meet. Normally, I would prefer depending on what my opponent starts playing. If I face another hunt down deck or something like that, if I see Emperor or something like that, I could assume that he's playing a cheese deck, and then I would prefer to lose some cards and hope to get the signal or retrieving or getting honor on my draw deck, because I can look at my deck with both hidden base and squadron assignments to see where is my honor of the Jedi if I face hunt down deck. If I face a rebel strike team deck, then I don't want to look at my strike planning. That's just give me another cards in the deck. That's Calrissian, and I still have 3 Han Solos to use to get him or Falcon on the table. So then I wouldn't prefer to use waste my your insights as well just to find my strike planning. So it's depending on what kind of deck I face in the beginning, what cards I want to pull.
Okay. I mean, all right, okay. I mean, I guess indoor operations, okay, you probably don't want this as badly. Makes sense. All right. But if you're facing, let's say, Bring Him Before Me, right? You're facing Bring Him Before Me and you don't think it's a cheese deck. I guess it could be a cheese. They could be playing numbers, with Palpatine, I suppose. But I guess yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Bringing Before Me would be a big surprise if they played cheese, because they are depending on Vader or something like that, other stuff, because they want to grab Luke. So in that case, I think I would have pulled my honor just to protect me if I need to let Luke go to the other side as a grabbed prisoner. So
Okay. So you have strike planning basically what? Just because a lot of people use this to deny force. Like a lot of people use this and they like to deploy indoor first thing. And so, but you're saying you actually like to get Tatooine first. So usually I'm guessing you don't actually, yeah, like you said earlier, you don't actually have this early on. You actually have this later. So you're actually not primarily at the beginning use this as a force denial technique, is what I'm hearing.
no, it's depending on if my opponent plays in space or, like I said, and operations, then I don't need to pull that at all. And if I need to pull it, depending on my starting hand, then I use it as you said, as a force denial, and maybe get Lando on my hand, depending on what kind of hand I have, or if I want to look where Lando is, just to get him out of the deck and get him cheaper on Falcon, depending on where my cards are.
Okay. So you have some interesting choices here. You have a Jaren Webb and you have a Blount. You have 2 spies. I'm guessing you did this because you didn't want to have transmission terminated, I guess, because some
You
people use
missed
this.
the third spy. It's Tycho also in
True. Yeah, you have
beside
3. You're
Watcher
right. You
there.
have 3. True. So
And that's mainly because I could play them on the executor side just because they are spies, just to get rid of the search and force my opponents to deploy characters on the executor side.
okay. And so that's basically your plan. And okay, so that's your plan. And so I'm guessing you deploy 1 spy and then maybe 1 main, like maybe a spy and a Luke or a spy and a Han, or you give or spy and an Obi. I'm guessing, because you don't have a Gik here. I don't see or
No,
Pujix, yeah, at all here. Yeah. Okay. Um, and
I
then
would prefer to play the Rebel Barrier instead. If I have an opportunity to have that on the hand and they play some characters, then I would refuse 1 character to be able to battle, and I can move away from a side which he can't drain me at. So
makes sense. All right, so you have Boshek as your 4. You have 3 different Leias as a second 4. You have 2 Lukes. You have a Melas, and you have 2 Obi-Wans. You don't have a Yoda, right? Some decks like to, because they deploy, they deploy Dagobah, Yoda's Hut, and Yoda. Is there a reason why you didn't want to go for Yoda and maybe have an additional -2 attrition, or is it too expensive and too slow, or help me understand that one?
I think in this deck it would be too slow because if I want to have both the system and the system, I can pull the hut just to get more force. I still need to pull Yoda because I can't take Yoda out of the reserve deck like I can do with the pilots. And I think that would be a waste of time just to try to achieve a -2 attrition and 3 force due to Hut and Yoda. So I would I like to start with the systems I have. I haven't really looked at that because I think it would slow the deck down more because then I would be more searchable for Yoda just to make him a -2 attrition. And if I face like Dylan's tie deck or someone other tie deck which uses Talon Roll, then Yoda would be useful. It wouldn't bring anything good to the deck.
Okay. And obviously, you have Taw's, there's Taw's Caw, right, which you don't use. And
Mm.
I'm guessing you don't use this simply because you have, more Obi-Wans. I thought it was interesting that you had, 3 versions of Han, 3 versions of Leia. Is a reason why not, take off one Leia or take off one Han and just have a Taw's in case you want to deploy to on the ground or ship, have an extra 4 ability character to stack with your kind of your main retrieval ability here?
Uh, yeah, I've been thinking about it, but the latest change I did in this deck that normally I would have a T key 4 to 1, I think the number is, that the Han that is undercover, just to make the opponent T key 4 to 2. I was the one number from wrong. That's just to make him protect from drains on the ground if there's too heavy drains, but lately I learned that I think I have a better chance with the Super Falcon in space. And like we said, to continue on the Yoda theme, since my Admiral Order gives me more attrition to my ships, I wouldn't need Yoda to make that, and still that would make me make more damage on docking base if my opponent plays that, and if the docking base are at my systems.
Okay. And I thought it was interesting too, because yeah, you do have I'll take the leader, and I'll take the leader penalizes you if you have Tantive or Spiral or Liberty without a pilot there. Um, and I'm guessing obviously Tantive can be very nice. I've seen Dr. Torch use this to, surprise an opponent. Like maybe an opponent is, hiding out at, Wakulumi or whatever. And or they're hiding out at Raltier, right? And you can, like deploy and attack them immediately. And actually, you have 3 spies, so if you wanted to attack with one of your spies and a ship, you could go there directly. So I thought that was cool. And actually, interesting enough, you did the Blount in the ship. You don't see a lot of people using Tala 2. So you have multiple ways to kind of attack your opponent where they might think that they are able, protected. Um, are you are you like prioritizing your kind of your ships with pilots simply because you have squadron assignments, or are you trying to like look through your deck and says I really need a tandem deck because I want to put 5 of my pilots there so I have 8 abilities so that I can get a lot of you know force retrieval, or kind of help me understand that kind of priority process?
The priority is I would like to get Wedge out with a protection with another red pilot and prefer to have X-wing cannons on his ship. So if anything goes in space, I would be able to shoot that down. The spiral is what we say for a sucker surprise. If I don't have more than 5 ability, I would be able to play that as an react to make suckers damage, so you don't make my destiny 0. The other spy on Tala 2 is always a great protection if I face ISB operation deck, because I have my own Coruscant system and I can deploy him on the opponent's systems and make him not be able to flip his objective until he has get rid of Tala and or the pilot, Lieutenant Blunt.
True, and there was a ISB space deck in 2021, and Rabbit did a ISB space in 2024. So you did have some protection with Blount if that match had come to place. So that is cool.
Yeah.
Agreed here. Obviously, I thought it was interesting too because you only retrieve via our most desperate hour, right? You could have had 3, you could have had 4. Why only 2?
I normally switch between having 3 armors desperate hours and 1 out of I missed the card name next to the rebel barrier. Because there are 5 and there are 6 in the Destiny's draw. Some I can just pull back in the deck, and then normally I don't get an opportunity to play so much from the Armistice per hour. Normally I get more to use out of commission.
Mm-hmm.
So they are just to bring some cards back, and like the other deck, I have Draw the Fire in the deck. So right played, I could retrieve and still get back my almost desperate hour. So just a little 6 precaution, and if I need it, I play it at the right time at the right moment.
Okay. I guess my only thought is that to get there you have to move, right? You have to move from Tatooine to Alderaan. So
Yes.
yeah, and the issue is that your battle phase is before your move phase. So unless you know they can't fight you somewhere or they can't force train, it seems it'd be a little bit hard to, move there and then retrieve this immediately. It would seem like to me.
Mm. But like I said, I would like to have that before I have on the edge or something like that, because on the edge it's more grabbable because it's an interrupt, and it's depending that I track high destiny cards to get some cards back. So that's why I prefer to play our most desperate hour in the deck, because if I don't pull it, I have a 6 in the deck for destiny. If I pull it on the hand, I can plan, and normally I would retrieve 4, 5, maybe 6 force, depending on which characters are on the table, or depending on my opponent, if he plays secret plans or stuff like that makes me pay for my retrieval. But I like to play it carefully and prefer to have it in the deck until the end, until I really need to retrieve cards to make the difference to win the game.
Makes sense. I guess my only concern is like these are such valuable cards. Are you vulnerable to like Grimtosh during the game? Or Monarch, I guess I should say. Because you don't want to you don't want to just dump one.
Yeah, well, since I only played 2 of most copies of the cards, I would be really unlucky if I had both on my hands at the same time. So that's why I could use, even if I flipped my objective, then I could use squadron assignments to look at my deck every turn to see where are my cards, what cards are important to have knowledge where they could be.
Okay. And no, I mean, I like the fact that you put out a commission, right? That can go back. You have a few maneuvers of the space deck. It's easy to go back there. And I'm guessing, because you're not using a lot of decks use a few maneuvers on the edge. You're not doing that this case. So a few maneuvers is just mostly for tracking. And I'm guessing it's just another nice bonus if they're using kind of like a laser, cannon deck against you, like a tie based or something.
Yeah, and could be used to one of my ships to make him, what do we say, the distance from Tatooine to Alderaan, because some of the other ships just have hyperspeed 4 or less. So That gives me the range that I need if I want to or need to perform an our most desperate hour.
That is a good point. So that means, yeah, a Tangent could do it. A Liberty could do it. Yeah. So the lowest hyperspeed you have looks to be 3. Yeah, it looks like you don't have lower than 3. Okay. That I
Yeah,
was
but
thinking about that.
still, I
Yeah.
think it will not work on the Liberty because it's only to starfighters.
Uh, I don't think so. It says target rebel at Tatooine. Oh, you're right. Maneuver any starfighter. I'm sorry, you're right. Starfighters only, correct. But you could do with Blount, I guess. If you needed to move Blount for some reason, you could. That'd be the benefit.
Or the Green Squadron 3. So
3.
I think that it targets every starfighter I have in the decks. So I just need a rebel on any ship. Then I could use any ship to retrieve if it's necessary.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So, are you deploying Obi-Wan on your kind of your capital starships just to get, extra force retrieval if you're facing a dark side space deck, or would you just not do that, or help me understand that bit?
Uh, I use him to battle on the ground if necessary, either with Luke or without Luke, depending on what kind of deck I faces. Otherwise, it is a plus to retrieve in space, and if I need to lose him, I lose him as an attrition in a battle in space.
That that makes sense. So, I guess let's talk about results. So, how did this deck fare? Again, you had the statistics for your Hunt Down Ties deck. How did
Yeah,
this deck do?
it's not as good as the other deck. It's around 60%, 6 of 10 games it's winning. It's mainly, I think, the main cause is because I alter what should we say, what my hidden base system is. Depending on what deck I face, I have 4 or 5 different. I choose between Alderaan, Tatooine, Kashyyyk, Endors. So normally I always switch which is the hidden base depending on what kind of deck I faces, which makes even if you and I should play, I might have another system in the next game because I try to remember who I played last and what systems did I have, or did you pick my system or not, just to move it around to be confusing. Because the obvious thing would be that, oh, it's guess he drains for free or it's Kifex. So I try to be a little confusing about which system is the hidden base.
No, that's standard play for hidden base, and you kind of have to. Otherwise, if it's the same thing every time, hidden base doesn't work nearly as well. You need that randomization, even if it's not always optimal. Completely agree with that
Yeah.
one. So, if you were facing against this deck, like what decks give your hidden base the most trouble? Would you say?
Um, Hunt down Epic Duel, I have big problems with because I can't go down and battle with Luke or Vader, and or Luke with Obi, or if he has been able to deploy Vader, then I can't even go down with Leia to battle him because I have too few characters and I need to have my high destinies on the right places. Otherwise, I have to rely on that. I can remove Visage with my spies and try to stop him in space from finding my systems, or if I flip my objective, that I could refuse 2 force trains due to that. But an epic duel on the ground normally have some ships in the decks, so that's why it's important to have the rebel barrier. So if he wants to put the ship in space, I have to be able to stop him at the site and battle him away. That's the main thing and the most problem I have to win against an epic duel deck.
Yeah, because you're right. Because the epic duel would remove Obi or Luke from play one way or another, and so you can't cycle them. Whereas I guess you're facing Bring Before Me. If you lose against Vader, you can fight again. potentially. I mean, I guess my question is, how often are you able to actually get a truly infinite loop, or is it an infinite loop not really necessary? Like your deck is good enough by the time you're able to retrieve.
I don't need to get an infinite loop. I could use them separately, or normally, if I need to. I think it's a few games I needed both to recycle cards and have an opportunity to loop them. But normally, the one of the most expert hours is enough to retrieve the cards I need to have enough force to beat my opponent.
Okay. Any advice for people who want to play this deck or a similar deck to one? How should they go about it?
Well, normally I'm like you see, both decks have retrieval. I have a little love for retrieval cards because I want to have all my cards in my deck. That might be my big issue with myself, that I always want to do something funny or something retrieval with my decks. But um, I like to say that sometimes I'm a little eager and I have a little more optimistic that I deploy too fast, too little on too thin on places that makes my opponent go and have a beatdown on me on other stuff. But otherwise, I would say be patient, look at the opponent, what is he playing, what chances do I have to beat him with the deck I have here, what I need to do to beat him on the ground. And like I said, I could use the speeders just to prevent that he gets an epic duel because I'm in a vehicle or something like that. But still, he would get an extra battle draw, something like that, and I would still lose on the ground. And if I don't have a high destiny enough, then Vader or Mara would still be on the ground, draining. So have a little patience, trust the deck, try to recircle high destiny cards.
All right. Well, thank you. I think you answered the questions pretty well. I really like your deck, and it's frustrating to fight against. And no, thanks so much. Any last minute thoughts on anything before we go?
No, I just would like to thanks the other players who made this interview possible. I hope I have been able to satisfy some questions, because this is first time. That's the first time for everything. And I'd like to see or meet the other people live again. I'm still waiting to see where the World Champions will be for 2025. I suppose it will be in America, but still, I made a lot of friends in Europe last year with a lot of what was I internet faces who were my real faces. So let's hope we see each other out there in the real community, not just on the internet. And to the players who want to play in the retro tournament in May, I might be the guy to beat, but I would prefer that we learn how to beat Dr. Torch, because he's quite a good player. And I'm signed up for the retro tournament, so maybe I would be like a bounty to beat in that tournament. But still, I like to play, and I would, like I said, I will lose in style as long as the game is fun and it's a deck that I didn't suspect to meet. So let's meet in the May tournament, and may the force be with you, people.
Couldn't have said it better. May the force be with you. Thank you so much, Tony. It's been a pleasure. Take care, sir.
The same, Bill. See you around.
See you.